GM, everybody. Welcome back to another edition of FraxCheck. This is FraxCheck number 57, and I'm your host, Capital K. And we'll be going straight to the source of truth via checking the chain. But before we do that, please make sure you smash that subscribe button and hit that like button. Make sure you turn on the bell notification as well. And join the conversation at Flywheel DeFi on Telegram and follow us at Flywheel DeFi on Twitter. Now, this week or these 2 weeks, I call it the holiday blues. And with that, as the name alludes to, we are slightly down a little. I thought we were in a turning point last FraxCheck at the beginning of November, hoping we can, really turn things around for the holiday season. It looks like we're going to be down a bit longer. But without further ado, let's dive in. And as always, we start with the peg, or rather with the Frax stablecoin. Here, we dropped slightly down 30 bips to 669 million in TVL. Maybe we're just doing it just for the meme, but hopefully we don't hang out here for too long. That's it on the stablecoin supply. Moving on to the peg. Here we saw the peg got as high as $1 and as low as 0.999 for the week. However, we can't just trust dashboards, so we got to go out there and get into the market. And here I swapped 80 million of Frax for USDC to receive an exchange rate of 0.994. Now, for those viewers and listeners who's been with us for a while, you know that I usually do this at 100 million Frax, but have slowly forced to decrease the swap amount down to 80 now, just so that we can hit that threshold of about 99 cents on the dollar. This is due to the Frax BP being again imbalanced, but we'll get more to that in the Frax BP portion. Now let's take a look at the balance sheet. Here we see a slight drop of 60 bips on the assets, down about 4.8 million. Previously, last 2 weeks ago, we were up about 7. So kind of swinging back and forth just like the market is. Additionally, though, we did see a 30 bips drop in the liabilities column. So it's good to see that the decrease in assets wasn't purely from the equity portion. And now, obviously, as my accounting professor said, meaning assets equals liabilities plus equity. So if assets is down 4.8 and liabilities is down 2.1, then equity got to be down 2.7 for it to balance. And that's exactly what we see here. And in total, the total assets we have right now are about 814 million, with the total liabilities at 740 million, and our balance of the two is about 74 million. And if you do some quick math, you could figure out what our collateralization ratio is. And if you want to do that at home, you could. Here you go to fax.frax.finance, make sure you hit the Frax stablecoin page, and then you pick out these line items. First, total assets. Subtract out locked liquidity. Then you get what I call treasury assets. Then you divide that by Frax supply, okay, or the supply of outstanding Frax, which gives you a collateral ratio of 93.8%. Pretty solid, pretty solid. Moving on, we now go to Frax BP, as I mentioned earlier. We are currently at a slight imbalance, even though our TVO actually went up a bit to 133.9 million from 133.7 or 8 2 weeks ago. But the balance in the pool has kind of dragged on, to the other side. We were at, I think, 66 and 33, but now we are at a 70-30 split. And if you guys recall, the last time we kind of pushed to this upper bound limit, the pool had to rebalance. And that was where you see that large drop right here, going from about this drop was like a $200 million drop. So if we were to use that as a comp, this 40 million mark is what we would have to balance. So you could see another $40 million being pulled out of this pool. Not the greatest news, but I'm here to check the chain and tell you the truth. So anyways, However, though, in terms of monthly volume, we've been doing pretty awesome. We facilitated about 44.6 million in monthly volume, which is about a third of what's going on here with the TVL. So that's pretty, standard, I would say. Not high, not too low, because we've seen it in like the single digits during the deep bear. But regardless, moving on, we got to take a look at all of Frax related stablecoins and all the TVL across the different pools. Here we have Frax BP at 134 million, 3 pool at 195 million, Frax 3 CRV at 10, and Frax PP at 64. So if you add up all the Frax related pools, we come out at about 205 million, give or take. And we are, 1.06x that of the 3 pool. In the past, not too distant ago, we were almost 3x the size of 3 pool. So it is quite astonishing to see us being able to scale all the way to that size and all the way back down to this level in both the liquidity situation as well as obviously our supply. All right, moving on, we have another use case for Frax, which is SFrax. Here, we also saw a drop of 13% down to 30 million in SFrax TVL, earning 5.4% APY with 186 SFrax holders. So, what's interesting here is that our holder count remained flat, unchanged since last week, and we are actually down about a third from the all-time high of $45 million in SFrax supply when SFrax first launched. But given that the market is obviously picking up slightly, I could see that people are going further out on the risk curve, therefore being more risk seeking, and obviously holding stables during this moment is not desirable. So expect it, but good thing that we have this asset here now in case we were to ever go back to it. All right. Moving on, we have the crowd favorite, as always, FrxETH. And here, like I said, this is the holiday blues because I definitely want to see this number higher. But unfortunately for FrxETH, we only grew by 10 basis points since 2 weeks ago. You heard that correct. We only grew by 0.1% from 291,000 to 295,000 over the last 2 weeks. Additionally, where all the FrxETH are hanging out was pretty much unchanged since 2 weeks ago, which is 75% staked in FrxETH, 6% in FrxETH, 10% in FrxETH, and 2% in FrxETH, with the remaining 6% chilling in the ether. This is the de facto monetary premium. So that is how FrxETH is, where they're all hanging out. But we should take a look at the market landscape of how things are comparing, because this growth rate is scary to me. Not gonna lie, scary to me. But actually, before that, we are obviously FrxETH is still a stablecoin, so you got to go in there and check the peg. Here you see swapping 3,500 FrxETH gives you an exchange rate of 0.998. One of the best darn exchange rate I feel for an LST out there. Now, in terms of TVL, how to facilitate all that liquidity, there is 156 million in liquidity across the many FrxETH pairs, as mentioned earlier. But one thing to point out is the split between them are again 70-30, with FrxETH on the 70 and ETH with STETH comprising the other 30. Again, getting balanced, but our peg is still strong. Moving on, we have the market landscape. We see here that we've been pretty much stuck at this 2.5% market share for, man, I don't want to know how long, maybe 2 months or so, month and a half, somewhere around there. But it just seems like we can't break out from this range. And to add, I guess, salt to injury is that our competitors, Lido and Rocket Pool, are pretty much growing at the same rate, if not better than we are. And they're massively larger. Rocket Pool owns about 8 point call it 9% of the market, and we only own 2.5% of the market, whereas Lido dominates at like 78% of the market. So if they're growing at that rate and we're going at this, it's going to be a challenge, let's just say, for us to get up there to compete again. So hopefully we see this number change and pump back up. But one area that we rarely ever need to, quote, pump up is the yield, because we are constantly on the top at 4% APY. FrxETH is above Steth, RETH, Stakewise, and Anchor. Okay, but we're not that far ahead. We're ahead by about 10%. So we should not rest easy. This is still a fight, and we need to dominate and get more market share. You see here that Rocket Pool ETH, if you had staked in FrxETH instead of RETH or Steth for the year, this is a year-to-date chart. I didn't get a chance to update the graph here. The image didn't load, but the amount is you would have had 47% more than you would have if you had staked in FrxETH instead of RETH, and 29% more in FrxETH instead of Steth. So regardless of what's going on in our market share or whatnot, we are still the premier place to get the highest LST yields. Numbers don't lie. It is what it is, but just because we built the better product doesn't mean the users are going to come. So please help spread the word. Let people know about the FrxETH LST product, and we appreciate it. Anyways, moving on, we have our middle child product, as I like to call it, and this is F to the P to the I. And as a reminder, in case everybody forgot about the middle child, this is the Frax Price Index. It is the stable coin that tracks CPI, which is the Consumer Price Index, aka inflation. And here we actually saw inflation drop from 3.7 down to 3.2%. Okay. And in addition to that, FPI, the peg, is still above what is required by 4 bips. So pretty good there. No change in terms of FPI supply. However, I do want to note that the treasury value for FPI is at 92.8 million, and there is an equity, aka excess, after repaying every single FPI holder. The treasury still has $4.2 million in value. Pretty damn solid. All right. Now let's move on to one of the other legs of the DeFi Trinity, which is Frax Lend. I want to point out something interesting here. We've been pretty much hovering around this $240, $250 million in TVL level. I think this is kind of where we're comfortable. And additionally to that, there's been about $67 million being borrowed against the collateral value. So you see here, like, we're pretty much lounging here for the last a month and a half at least. And I kind of like to see that. It's like we found a place that we're healthy in, and our utilization rate is at 85%, meaning the amount borrowed divided by the amount lent is at 85%. I've always said I like the number 85% because it is high enough to provide enough liquidity for the borrowers who want it, but also low enough, or rather efficient enough, that the interest rate being paid to suppliers is enough to incentivize them loaning it out. So there's a delicate balance here, and I think 85% is where it's at. Now, moving on to the last leg of the DeFi Trinity, that is Frax Swap. So here you see Frax Swap has a slight dip in TVL, down 1.7%, currently at 63.7 million as at the time of recording. And what's super cool here is FraxSwap managed to facilitate 81.2 million in trading volume. That means 125% of the TVL churned over. That's freaking awesome. That is really, really good to see that a DEX is performing at this level and being able to churn out that much volume given the assets that it has and the liquidity that it offers. You kind of love to see it. Here's a quick snapshot of like the top swap pools by volume. Obviously, as always, it is FXS and Frax on the top, followed by Frax and WETH. And then obviously our friends over at IQ Frax is taking third place here. And then look, FPIS is out there trading $500,000 for the last 7 days. Fairly low, but still, nonetheless, you kind of like to see it. Now, moving on, we have our, or rather, my favorite section of this whole thing. It is the Show Me the Money slide. This is the profitability page you guys have been waiting for. And up first, as always, we have the FraxLend AMO. You see here that the FraxLend AMO decreased about 800K over the last 2 weeks down to 58 million. We were at about 62 million, I believe, like a month ago. So we've been slowly scaling down on the FraxLend AMO as well. However, our revenue is cranking up higher than ever. Okay, for the month of November so far, we've generated about $171,000. You annualize that, it comes out to be about a $2 million or so run rate. I mentioned that in the last FraxCheck, but seeing after another 2 weeks of performance, I feel pretty confident that we are in this $2 million run rate range. Awesome to see. Now, that breaks out to be about $44,000 per week. And at an APR of 7.3% that Frax is earning on its AMO, meaning all the Frax. So good to see that. Another avenue for FraxLend to make some revenue is in liquidations. And unfortunately, or also fortunately, there was only one liquidation in November so far. And that happened 13 days ago. And the amount that got liquidated, the amount that the protocol profited was $594. So kudos to almost everyone for staying safe out there. Nice work. And, to kind of cap off this FraxCheck with some good news, I want to show you that FPI is actually trending up for a profit for very first time in 3 months. FPI is in profit for 90K, like very green for the month of November. And we kind of love to see it. Super happy to see that we are generating that much revenue so far for that much profit so far for November. Very happy to see that. Now, lastly, we have our FrxETH revenue as well. And we're currently running at about 130K a month. And that comes out to be about 1.5 mil annual run rate annualized. So how did I get this number is you could take this all is found on fax.frax.finance on the FrxETH page. And here you look at the average income of ETH, which is 26.5 ETH, multiply that by 365 days. Then you multiply by the fee share, which is 8%. And then you divide that by 12 months, gives you the number of average ETH per month. And then you multiply that by the price, whichever price you so choose. And you get, a dollar amount, and then you annualize that. So that is kind of where we are currently at for the profitability of the Frax protocol. And with that, I hope I leave you with a high note. And thank you for joining me for this session of FraxCheck and the Holiday Blues. But before you go, please make sure you smash that subscribe button, tap that like button, and follow us on Twitter and join the conversation on Telegram at Flywheel DeFi. I will catch you guys in 2 weeks. See you in December. Peace.